Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode 14 of the Road to the ProcureTech Cup. I'm your host, Joël Conin-Demers. Really happy to have you once again with us today. Today, we're joined by Saas Rooms that's going to show us their SaaS spend optimization platform and solution. But before we get to that, let me bring on the co-host, Gabe Perez from RiseNow. How's it going, Gabe? How was your week?
It was going great. Crazy week as always, but excited to dive into this unique category today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one I know less about. I've worked less with over the years. So for me, it's going to be a learning experience, more than usual, at least as well. So before we bring in the team here, let me just remind you that we're on the road to the ProcureTech Cup. The journey continues. So as I mentioned, Saas Room on the show today, we've covered SRM, intake, autonomous sourcing, procurement analytics platforms, and we still have a while to go before the tournament at the end of March. One thing that's changed is the December 20th week. I've added a holiday edition of the show, so I'll give you a bit more details on LinkedIn as we progress and get closer to the date. But we'll get to the main course today. So I'll bring on David Bush, who's the North American CEO of Saas Rooms, and Philip Alouche, who's the founder and CEO, global CEO chairman as well. So thanks a lot for being here, guys. Happy to have you on the program.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joel and Gabe. Really appreciate the opportunity here to go through this for the next 30 minutes. And as advised and coached, I'll make this first part as brief as possible so we can spend more time in the demo itself. Just from a real quick introduction standpoint, and who we are. So again, as you mentioned, I'm David Bush. I've been in this procurement technology industry for 25 years and have been a founder and executive positions in a number of companies over those years, from e-sourcing to source to pay, tail spend management, spend analysis, et cetera. And been here with Saas Rooms for about 2 years, and it's been very exciting, a lot of growth. Also with us is Philip, and he's the founder of Saas Rooms. Spent a good part of the last 10 years in procurement technology as a founder of organizations, and also was a practitioner for many years, doing executive roles in procurement at McDonald's and Microsoft, among others. So pleasure to meet everybody and go through some things. We'll just go through a little bit of a overview of the company, what our unique value proposition is, our ICP, and then jump into the demo. So Saas Rooms is, as Joel mentioned, a SaaS optimization tool. You can think of it like spend analysis, but at the category level, and that category is software and also can include cloud and infrastructure, things like hosting, AWS, et cetera. It is a subscription-based tool that is available as a SaaS tool, ironically. And what we do is we provide an end-to-end view and visibility into all the software as a service and software tools that are within an organization. And it's a full suite from that standpoint at that category level. What we do is we'll go through essentially a 30-day implementation process. And again, for any practitioners here, it's similar to like how spend analysis would go, but much quicker. We're going to get primary contracts, AP data, and then also usage data. That's a huge difference from something like spend analysis, which is just going to show you your taxonomy and categories and sourcing opportunities. When we get that usage data, we'll then be able to marry up all these different variables and be able to see where opportunities are for optimization of the SaaS category, the software category. Where we come in and again, where we add more value is in the form of a managed service. So once we have all the usage data, the contract data, and the spend data, we're going to start making recommendations. And, frequently within the first 30 to 60 days, we'll have significant ROI because we'll be able to make recommendations on what we're seeing as far as the, what the licenses are being, how the licenses are being used, which ones are dormant or, allocated to the wrong level, et cetera. So we'll go through, we'll do a right sizing exercise. We'll look to consolidate tools when there's overlapping products that are inside the organization. There's potential opportunity to terminate some tools that just aren't being used. And then, of course, one of the big ones is downgrading licenses. So, frequently we'll see things like in a Microsoft Office suite where you'll have 1,000 licenses, but really only use 100, and then an additional, couple hundred might be at the wrong level and paying too much. That's a very common situation that we'll end up seeing. Additionally, we work with companies of all sizes, so all the way from SMBs up to Fortune 500. You can see some of our clients here. Like I said, some of the bigger companies like JLL, IFF, Zandos, et cetera. And then also small companies, tech companies that could be even under a few hundred employees. We also have really strong relationships in private equity organizations, Carlyle and LKCM Headwaters, and consulting firms like Kearney, and then also we've been added into the Omnia marketplace as well. So a lot of great customers and momentum at this point. We really focus. We work with companies who can be tens of thousands of employees. That's definitely not a problem, but find that we can get fastest results with organizations I would consider in the mid-market, so 500 to 5,000 employees. And you typically will see in an organization like that a fairly small procurement team, a lot of tools, a significant spend in the millions of dollars, and the ability to move more quickly than a super large global organization. So that's where we try to focus. That's also a lot of where private equity portcos kind of sit in that range as well. On the unique value proposition that we wanted to cover here real quickly, and then we'll jump into the demo, is kind of three main things that we see when we're talking to organizations. First of all, we have usage data collection method that is going to come from us integrating with organization's SSO, single sign-on, but then also collecting everything that's outside of SSO. So SSO is probably only going to get 10 to 20% of the software applications that are available inside the organization. Our ShadowSense data collection will allow us to get everything else. So we will essentially, at that point, have 100% of the tools. And it's very typical that 50% inside an organization, 50% of the tools are what's known as shadow IT. So they're unknown to the IT department. They may have gone outside the procurement process, purchased at regional levels or departmental levels or anything like that. But we're able to capture all that data and continue to refresh it on a very frequent basis in an automated way. So it's a very easy process for our customers.
So David, question there. This SaaS data usually isn't always in a P2P tool, right? A lot of source to pay indirect tools don't track this very well, hence why Saas Rooms exists. How do you get all this data in there if you've got people buying software all over the place at different prices? Like you said, some shadow IT, some software could cost $10,000 a year and need minimal approval when we bought in a department. How do you get this all into the application?
So that's where the usage data comes in, Gabe. We'll be able to triangulate everything that's going on. So what we do is we'll collect the contracts over time. That will give us insight into where the opportunities might be to move things around. But through the AP data, we'll see where who the vendors are that are being sending invoices, and then the usage data, because honestly, there's even free apps out there that are being used inside organizations. You can only discover those by seeing where the logins are and where the usage is at each individual app level. And then we curate all that data and then build out the dashboards and then subsequently the recommendations from there.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And then the second thing is on the, it's basically everything's in one place. So, instead of having to go into a Microsoft console, an AWS console, a ServiceNow console, and having all these different things in different places, we'll have everything all in one place with those recommendations built in. We also have a marketplace, so you can see what's in your stack versus what's outside of your stack. You can essentially shop for new tools in there, get best in class pricing through our pre-negotiated deals that we have in there, which is hundreds, if not thousands, of tools where you can, go in and purchase directly. And then finally, something that we're almost ready to release, it's coming soon, is what we call digital workers. It's our AI agents. And that's going to be extremely cool. Everyone's familiar with Gen AI and where it is out there, but we're sitting on a huge amount of data as far as this category goes, and being able, having the opportunity to directly speak to your data and get those recommendations in an automated way and have the system push out, where you should be focusing your efforts. That's what we're extremely close to having released, and is going to be very exciting. So those were the things I was going to cover, pretty close on time. Wanted to turn it over, and I'll stop sharing, Joel, if that's cool with you, and let Philip take over.
Yeah, we could see Phil's screen, and I'm getting a sense for how you're, as you said, shadow sense, right? How you're using a bunch of different strategies to sense or to gather data, and so it'll be really cool to see, how you can use that data after you've done that to drive results.
Exactly.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for the intro. So here at the front end of Saas Rooms, we have a dashboard. Everyone loves a nice dashboard where you can keep track of everything that's going on in your application, what your targets are, how close you are to achieving, etc., etc. So at the top here, you can see some key KPIs, how many tools you have, how many of them are actually being used, are you up to date with your contracts? And then here your savings pipeline, which is kind of the core. We're trying to drive savings and cost optimization, control of all your IT space. Then you have your tasks. We have different roles in the tool, but generally speaking, the objective is to proceed towards savings, contract renewals. And it's all being tracked here, and you're being prompted to kind of like move things on to the next stage. Here in the middle, you got a very deep contracts renewal schedule, because in this particular space, contracts keeping ahead of the renewal cycle is really, really key to achieving good results. And obviously, you don't want to miss any deadlines and just auto renew, for example. So this is key to be able to be on top of that. And here, finally, here's your kind of dashboard of everything you're spending, how many licenses you had, and how many of your licenses are active, and what can potentially be removed or shifted around. Okay, so this is a really cool dashboard that basically keeps you on top of everything, and you can also use it to communicate with your peers, or update your boss, and so on. So it's really cool. Now,
and Phil, as you move on can you hear Phil? As you move on, I'm just wondering, the dashboard has all the data that you need. I'm just wondering if at the organizational level, right, we're starting to have like death by dashboard, where if I have all these tools, they all have different dashboards. Like how do you think about taking the data that you have and feeding it into like top level dashboards, or if there's a tool that's being used for the whole of procurement to monitor savings and tracking and all that? Like, what's your thought process on integrating with that?
I mean, it's a super flexible platform in that sense. We already integrate with other procurement tech providers, where we're sharing dashboards or components of our dashboards where it makes sense, obviously to enhance the customer experience. So it's all very flexible. But I would say at this stage, mostly our tool is mostly used on a standalone basis. At times we're embedded in wider procurement solutions, but mostly it's a standalone, our app.
Appreciate that.
Okay. Here, very quickly, here's our marketplace. You can find deals, you can find new apps, you can request new apps internally in the organization and get them loaded for yourself. Then you have in this section, this is where all the magic happens. So you have a whole suite of let's call it analytics that happens in here, and essentially we go very, very deep into each application. We can now understand exactly what people are doing with the licenses, to what extent they're using them, and also take decisions on not just apps that are not being used, but also what type of license should you really have as an individual, depending on your usage profile. So all this happens in here in a whole suite. I'm not going to click through everything because we don't have time today. But essentially what happens in the system is that it will read into all these insights, and it will push out opportunity tickets that then pop up over here. So the system is trained to know when a contract is coming up for renewal, when there's redundant licenses, all these kind of opportunities. They'll be pushed out here, and you can either decline or approve an opportunity, but once you approve it, it drops into your managed queue here. And this is kind of like a collaborative environment where you can keep track of all your live projects. You can collaborate with your team, or you can assign projects to Saas Rooms buyers. So this is where our managed service kicks in, and we help our customers achieve their results. So essentially the concept behind this is that nothing will fall through the cracks. Even if one of our clients is super busy in a period, they have very easy, smooth access to our support so they can get things done.
And Phil, how does that work, right? Like if I want to utilize that, if I want to utilize that service, right? How does that work? Is it like you pay yourselves with the savings that you generate in some respects, or it's like a certain fee, time and material, or fixed fee? Just wondering, like how do I leverage as a category manager that excess capacity that you're proposing?
So it's for the use of the platform and the services that come along with it. It's all built in. It's an annual fee, flat fee, which is calibrated depending on the size of your spend, and we take a percentage of spend, and then everything is included. So it's at your own discretion whether you want to use the support services or not.
So it's an all-you-can-source buffet, is what you're saying.
Exactly. So you use it or lose it, basically.
And how do you see when you engage with these SaaS providers, let's say mid-contract, and you realize half the license is on the shelf? In my experience, not all SaaS providers are willing to do something mid-contract. So how have you been successful achieving those savings during the contract?
Well, I would say, I mean, to begin with, we're ahead of the game. Yeah. So we would already know in 6 months' time, I don't know, Salesforce is coming up for renewal. So we'll already be preparing. We'll have a plan. Okay. Then obviously you can have different tactics and strategies.
So you're really basically creating a sourcing plan for the renewal, but you have all the data, which sort of puts you in a much more leverageable position than a normal renewal negotiation.
Absolutely. A lot of companies, they will, number one, they won't be prepared. Number two, they'll be late to engage with the supplier. And number three, they won't have the information to negotiate from a position of knowledge, right? So it could be that you are overusing a piece of software. It could be that you're underusing. It could be that your users are not satisfied with the tool or very satisfied, but often you just don't know, okay? But we will know all these things before we start talking to the suppliers.
Understood.
And in the renewal process, obviously, as Philip just discussed, that's, a lot of preparation goes into that. But, also, Gabe, as you said, during the middle of a contract, you can move things around frequently. So, you might be over licensed. You might have numerous people on, an E3 license on Microsoft instead of an E1 or an F1. You might, we see things where you're on an editor license for a BI tool where 90% of the people don't need to be editors. They just are viewers. And those kind of things you can approach in the middle of the contract.
Great.
And it seems by what you're saying, Dave, that like you're bringing intelligence to the party as well, right? Because what you just said, like I have no idea how Microsoft licenses are structured, right? Because I don't deal with Microsoft products. So you're bringing that knowledge and expertise to the table as well with that additional service that is combined with the tool.
That's exactly right. And we will show in the software where down to the user level, what parts of a tool they're using or not using. And that can help us give recommendations on what type of license they really should be paying for.
Yeah. And I see we're fast approaching the end of demo time here. So I want to make sure, Phil, you're covering what you want to cover. And I have a couple of questions for you when we transition off the demo.
Yeah, I think we've covered it. Thank you. Ready for questions?
Yeah, and there's obviously a lot more in there.
Oh, beautiful.
that we could show later.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Absolutely, right. And actually, we can help stimulate that discussion, right? Jackson asks, when requesting new SaaS apps, does this kick off a sourcing process in the tool?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say that yes, that was actually Philip did show that part. There's a workflow component. So when a requisition is made, it will go in there, and the users or Saas Rooms can move it through the process and track all the data around that sourcing process or whatever it may be.
Beautiful. And then a question from Dragos, really around more integration type, where you're pulling the data from, right? Do I manually need to populate vendor and category data? Or as Dragos is asking, can vendors and categories be pushed from an S2P solution, or I'll add on a back-end ERP?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it's the typical kind of integration that we do at the outset of when we configure the platform. If you have an S2P or other tool where you hold this type of data, we'll bring it in.
Awesome. And so I found those questions were pretty easy. So I think it's probably time to get real. So I'll throw it over to Gabe.
So appreciate the demo. It's pretty interesting, and it's a very complex category. I think I have a two-part question today. Number one, how is procurement justifying this for such a niche category? And then number two, following, although SaaS is a niche part of procurement, IT is a massive part of procurement. So how's the collaboration with IT going? Because I have been in organizations where IT feels they own something and procurement category feels they own some, cause some friction. So two-part question there.
Yeah, that's a great question, Gabe. So the justification, let me start with that, is that this is an exploding category from a spend perspective. In a typical organization, you could see more than likely about $10,000 per FTE. That would be, that's from Bain numbers. So, when you get into large size organizations, even mid-size organizations, this spend category is big. Also, the procurement team frequently doesn't have the internal expertise or the bandwidth to cover this category, which is relatively new and pretty much doubling year over year as far as its size and complexity. So there's a huge need for this. Technically, like anything else in procurement, it can be done manually, but it's a lot of work and a lot of data to go through, and it's pretty overwhelming. So having outside expertise to come in and automate this ultimately is going to result, what we see is just remarkable results. I mean, we generally say 10 to 20% savings, but it's frequently way over that. And it reminds me very much of the early days of e-sourcing, where reverse auctions were getting, 20, 30, 40% savings. That's extremely typical, where we will see those kind of giant numbers, ROI in the 10, 20, 30x standpoint. And so, from my perspective, it's a pretty easy win in a procurement strategy.
And in terms of working with IT, right, there's the sourcing of a solution and there's the management ongoing of a solution. And a lot of times there's a bigger IT management, IT asset tool in the organization. How have you seen experience with that in terms of, do you see friction with who owns it and collaboration with IT? I mean, how has that worked with your customers?
Yeah, there's more interaction between IT and procurement in this type of solution than I've seen in other solutions in the past in the procurement tech space. Especially in private equity and portfolio companies, we end up getting engaged with the CIO extremely early. With a direct customer that's not through private equity, it tends to be larger and will usually work directly with like a CPO or VP of procurement who's driving that. But there ultimately is going to be a lot of collaboration between IT. This is not like, a spend analysis tool where you go through an InfoSec questionnaire and IT's then, done with this. IT cares very much about this, as does procurement, and they both have cost savings goals. So there's a lot, our stakeholders are on both sides, and, who starts it and who's ongoing can change from client to client, but it's very common for us to be working with both. And then Philip, if you want to add in on, differences from like SAM or anything like that,
No,
as well.
No, I just think it's exciting that we can give the customers a platform that kind of brings them together across functions, and they can all see what's going on. They can share insights. They can discuss, hey, what are we going to do with this situation, and so on. And also, as both David and I are more kind of procurement, obviously procurement people. But here in this instance, we're adding a lot of value to the IT community. So it's a great group to work with.
Great. Thanks for the answers.
And if you don't mind, Gabe, I'll tack on one around change management, right? Because I find like if you've got IT and procurement working together greatly through this platform and aided by that service that you were mentioning, where you give a market intelligence on how the licenses are structured, where they could meet their needs while saving at the same time. I'm wondering, like, if you get feedback on the end users, right? Like everybody's got their tool and their tool's the best, and they need it for this specific requirement, but we've got 12 project management tools across the business, right? So what do you see as that dynamic, right? Is having the knowledge and the insight enough, or is there additional skills needed from those teams to get the results?
Yeah, you want to take that, Phil?
Well, we can. We obviously unearth all the insights and we can bring recommendations. But ultimately, it's always an internal discussion for the client in terms of how they approach a situation. They may have, I don't know, they may be running with Adobe Acrobat Reader and Kofax, which are two very similar products in parallel with the organization, and they might say, hey, we should get rid of Adobe, we should just keep Kofax, or the other way around. Those kind of discussions we run into very often. And then you have this, okay, then, well, a lot of people are wedded to Adobe, so we don't want to change. So these kind of discussions happens, but we can ultimately we can present the case in a very objective way, and that just makes it easier to make the right decision for your business. It may be that, hey, let's just keep both, but you can make the other decision as well. You have all the data there.
Exactly. Our position is not to make decisions. We're providing the information to our customers for them to then, be able to make educated decisions on what they want to do. Do you need 3 tools like that? Maybe, but it should be justified a little bit more deeply now that you know all the information, what it's costing, what the usage patterns are, and who's got it for what reasons.
Cool. Yeah. And as you're speaking, I'm kind of seeing a continuum, right? Where there's applications that are maybe more corporate or have 1 or 2 stakeholders, and it's a lot easier to get to result. Whereas if you have applications that are really spread across multiple stakeholders, then it's a bit more of a stakeholder management, change management file internally based on the results and the data that you're providing. Mm-hmm. Cool. Let's wrap up here with the ProcureTech market map. So, Saas Rooms, I think you did it's an impactful demo. I see a lot of the potential there, especially if clients of mine where there's an opportunity there for sure. So you classify yourself in spend analysis, demand management, and category management for this particular category. How do you think about partnerships, your roadmap, where you're going? I'm just curious to get your take on what the future holds for Saas Rooms.
Yeah, we obviously partner with consulting firms, private equity firms. Those are probably the primary ones. I mentioned Omnia as well. So partnerships, very open to other procurement technology organizations as well. that we work with, as Philip mentioned in the past, so we can directly pull data out of whether it's a STP system or a tailspin system, however we want to approach it. All those things are open for us. I mentioned earlier kind of where we're going. We're going very heavily into AI, and with having embedded agents that will really be taking over some of the recommendations to make it even more timely, get into some real intelligent insights, and be able to work directly with the customers, on their own data.
And I could see that use case, especially around the knowledge that you have on how licenses are structured for certain vendors, right? Being able to interact with an agent instead of having to rely on a managed service could help you scale this thing to other category managers as well. Yeah, so exactly. Very cool.
We're kind of replacing ourselves.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And so, Dave, Phil, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Would you let the viewers know, if they want to learn more, if they want a more detailed demo, if they want to talk about their specific context, where's the best place to reach you and get those conversations going?
Yeah, obviously we're here on LinkedIn, so that's a great place to start. You can find Philip and I pretty easily on LinkedIn, and I go through our website as well for contacts if you want to learn more. Our emails are first name dot last name and at Saas Rooms.
Very cool. Very cool. And for people that are on the LinkedIn event, you can actually go down to the details page and click through to Phil and David's profile. They're marked as speakers here. And if you want to follow the rest of the action, I just put the QR code up on screen so you can scan and get subscribed to the Procurement newsletter, where we cover all the action of what happened last week, what's coming this week, and a general overview of what we're covering, along with best practices of ProcureTech implementation, ProcureTech trends. Similarly, from a consulting standpoint, whether it be Gabe Perez at RiseNow, he's got the firepower to help you with your projects as you deploy these types of solutions out. Me as well, from a strategic advisor and road mapping perspective. So we'll see you again next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. And thanks again, Dave, Phil, for coming on the show. And we'll see everybody again soon.
Thank you, guys.